I didn't expect a grand celebration. I just wanted one afternoon, one room where I wasn't invisible. By the time April rolled around, I was already 33 weeks pregnant, my back ached, my ankles were balloons, and the spring sun in Seattle didn't offer much comfort. Still, I kept going. My little ground floor apartment smelled like fresh glue and vanilla-scented candles. Boxes lined the corners, and cloud-themed streamers swayed gently by the windows I had cleaned 3 times that week. No one offered to help me plan the baby shower. No one even asked. My mum, Sandra, claimed she had extra shifts at the local library, and my dad, Daniel, had stuff on his mind. Zoe, my sister, the walking headline said she was manifesting mental clarity before her Yale interview, of course. So I took care of it all. The invitations, the food, the music, the decorations, everything. Alone. I spent Friday night stringing tissue garlands across the entryway, balancing on a step stool with no one to hold it steady. My palms were sticky from craft glue, and the playlist I'd spent 2 hours building soft, calm acoustic tracks played faintly in the background, like a promise I wasn't sure would hold. I made peppermint tea and rubbed the side of my belly where my daughter had just kicked like she was cheering me on. Her name's going to be Una. She already feels like a quiet storm, gentle but firm. Unlike me, she won't go unseen. By Saturday morning, I was exhausted but hopeful. The little setup was simple but thoughtful: fruit, pastries, herbal tea, a vanilla cake with soft lavender buttercream, and a handmade sign that said, "Welcome, baby Luna." And for a moment, just before anyone arrived, I stood in the center of my living room and whispered, maybe today they'll actually see me. But if you've ever loved people who only love the version of you that stays silent, you probably already know how this ends. Guests started arriving around 1. Uncle Josh showed up first, holding a canvas tote full of children's books and a set of hand-carved wooden toys he said he'd saved from when I was little. The man still called me champ, even though I was about to become someone's father. Maya, 6 months pregnant and glowing like she belonged in a prenatal ad, walked in next, gift box in hand, smile soft and sincere. She hugged me like she meant it. The air felt warm. For the first time in years, it felt like a room was holding space for me. People laughed, sipped chamomile tea, gently poked the fruit tarts, and complimented the setup. My friend Leo shot me a wink as he admired the cake. "You outdid yourself, dude. This looks like Pinterest had a baby with Martha Stewart." I smiled. I almost let myself believe I was finally seen. And then the fork tapped the glass. Ding, ding. My mother Sandra, ever the orchestrator, stood in her sea green dress like she was hosting a gala. My dad hovered behind her like a misplaced punctuation mark. Before we cut the cake, she began, voice all syrup, "We have some exciting family news to share." That's when Zoe waltzed in late, of course holding up a bright yellow envelope like it was a trophy. "I got into Yale!" she shouted. The room exploded. Clapping, gasps, people standing to hug her like she'd just ended world hunger. Someone no idea who yelled, "That's our girl! My cake was forgotten." The one with "Welcome, baby Luna" piped carefully across the top. Someone ordered pizza. Someone else cranked up a Bluetooth speaker, Zoe's playlist, obviously. Bass-heavy, chaotic, the total opposite of what I'd curated. My soft acoustic tracks? Gone. The vibe? Hijacked. Me? Back in the background, holding a cup of cold peppermint tea that no one noticed I hadn't finished. Even Leo looked stunned, mouthing seriously from across the room. They turned my baby shower into Zoe's victory parade, and no one blinked. No one asked me how I was feeling. No one even looked at the banner. I watched as one of Zoe's friends knocked over a juice glass, the liquid creeping toward the cake box. I bent down, grabbing napkins before it soaked through the tablecloth. My belly pressed against my knees, my hands were sticky, my breath felt tight. And right then, wiping up someone else's mess at my own celebration, I realized they'd never really seen me, and they weren't going to. But that would change, and not with yelling or crying or begging. No, I had something better. I didn't sleep that night. The apartment still smelled like frosting and spilled soda. Someone had dragged one of the dining chairs across the floor and left a deep scratch by the hallway. My chamomile tea had turned bitter in its mug, and my body swollen, sore, sleep-deprived was too wired to rest. I just sat in Luna's half-finished nursery, staring at the glow in the dark stars I had stuck on the ceiling 2 weeks ago. They flickered faintly now, like they were apologizing for being here too. I replayed every moment of the party on loop, the forgotten cake, the music, the way Zoe beamed while people showered her in praise, the way my mum looked at her like she'd finally done something that made all the chaos of raising kids worth it. And I was the blur in the corner of every photo, the one holding the napkins, the one bending over to clean the floor, the one whose big day became an afterthought the moment Zoe opened her mouth. This wasn't just a one-time thing, this was a pattern. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just hurt, I was done. I opened the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out a grey folder. Inside, receipts, screenshots, utility bills, mortgage statements, proof of every unseen thing I'd done to keep this house and, by extension, them standing. The down payment I'd saved up for 3 years. The plumbing repair I paid for when Dad called it a minor leak. The new router I installed when Zoe needed better Wi-Fi for college apps, the groceries, the heating, the smart lock on the front door, all under my name, all without thanks. They had moved into my home like it was a default setting, as if the moment I had a space of my own, it became theirs too. Family doesn't need permission. My mum had once said when I asked if they were planning to stay long term, except they never asked me for permission. Not when they moved in. Not when they rearranged my furniture. Not when they claimed the best rooms. I made peppermint tea and sat at the kitchen table in silence as the sky turned from charcoal to blue. The walls were still thudding with bass from Zoe's speaker. Her laughter spilled from the hallway like syrup too sweet to be real. At exactly 6:00 a.m., I opened my laptop and clicked send on 3 emails. Each subject line was the same, notice to vacate. Attached was a 30-day notice for Sandra, Daniel, and Zoe. It wasn't dramatic. It was legal. Precise. Non-negotiable. By 7:00, the printed versions were sealed in 3 white envelopes. I placed them side by side on the dining table. They stood out among the half-empty chip bowls and forgotten plastic cups like little paper daggers. I didn't feel guilty. I felt still. At 7:15, my mum walked into the kitchen, hair tied up messily, yawning, cradling her usual mug of soy milk. "What's this?" she asked, blinking at the envelopes. She picked up the one with her name, opened it casually, skimmed, then her face dropped. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" I stepped into the room, calm, controlled. "It's not a joke," I said. "Those are just copies. I've already submitted the official notice through my lawyer." She stared at me like I had just stabbed her. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Move out. You're kicking us out of your house while you're pregnant?" "My house," I repeated. "Yes." My dad walked in right then, scratching his head, still half asleep. He looked at the paper my mum handed him, then turned to me. "What kind of stunt is this? You're going to cause stress for the whole family over one bad afternoon." "It's not just about yesterday," I said. "It's about every day before that." The room fell quiet. Zoe wandered in last, wearing one of my hoodies, headphones still around her neck. She looked at me with the same smug confusion she wore at the party. Wait, are you seriously kicking us out? Because I got into Yale? I almost laughed. No, Zoe. It's because I spent years being treated like background noise. Because I made sacrifices that no one acknowledged. Because every time you got a trophy, I was the one clapping. And when I had a moment, you took the microphone. She crossed her arms and muttered, "This is so dramatic." I looked her dead in the eye. No, this is what boundaries look like. And then I turned and walked away. I could hear them scrambling behind me. Footsteps, whispers, paper rustling, doors opening and closing. But I didn't stop. I went into Luna's room. I picked up the tiny lavender onesie I'd folded the night before, and I sat down, legs stretched out, one hand on my belly, and exhaled. No more negotiating for scraps. No more making room for people who treat me like a convenience. This wasn't revenge, this was reclamation. And it had been a long time coming. If silence had weight, the apartment would have collapsed. They didn't scream. Not right away. There were no suitcases flying down the stairs. No doors slammed so hard they cracked. Instead, the tension settled in slow, like smoke after a fire. Heavy, invisible, suffocating. For the next few days, no one said a word to me directly, but every slammed cabinet, every exaggerated sigh, every passive-aggressive comment whispered just loud enough to hear, it all spoke the same message. How dare you? My mum started what I call her guilt tour. Late-night sobbing sessions on the living room couch. Monologues to no one in particular about how hard she worked, how many sacrifices she made, and how ungrateful some people could be. She made sure to sigh louder if I walked past. Once she wiped invisible tears with such dramatic flair, I genuinely wondered if she'd missed her calling as a soap opera actress. She called my Uncle Josh in Arizona, the only relative I still keep in touch with, and tearfully told him I was kicking my own family out while carrying a child. The next day, I got a long message, "Ethan, sweetheart, whatever you're feeling, don't let Luna grow up without her grandparents. Family is forever." That phrase made my stomach turn. My dad? He changed tactics. He started doing things he hadn't done once in the entire time they'd lived here. Wiped down the counters, took out the trash, asked me in a voice 2 octaves softer how I'd slept. It wasn't guilt. It was strategy. He thought if he played the part of the helpful, supportive father, I'd forget 24 years of being overlooked. That I'd forget him shrugging at Zoe's celebration, hijacking my baby shower, like it was just bad timing. He even tried making breakfast one morning. Burned eggs. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. Zoe was the only one who didn't fake civility. She blasted music from her room, full volume, songs with heavy bass and lyrics that practically spit in my direction. She slammed her door every time she passed me in the hallway, and when she finally spoke, it wasn't an apology. It was a low jab over dinner, as I was arranging Luna's room decor at the table. Not sure how you plan to raise a kid alone when you can't even get people to stick around for a baby shower. I didn't look up. I just tucked another lavender sprig into the mason jar and kept humming to myself. But the line stayed with me. It echoed, not because it was true, but because it was so expected. That was the role I'd been assigned for years, the one who sacrifices, who doesn't ask for help, who carries everyone else's weight and never says she's tired. Except now, that role was gone, terminated, cancelled. And they didn't know what to do with the new version of me. On day 14, it escalated. I got an email from a vendor I'd been negotiating with, a supplier who could have doubled my online store's reach. They politely backed out. "We've received concerning information from a family member suggesting you may not be emotionally stable enough to manage operations during maternity. We've decided to hold off on partnership until further notice. I stared at the screen. Then I stared at the coffee mug in my hand. Then I stared at the wall. And I knew. They had gone there. Someone, and I didn't need to guess who, had reached out to one of my potential partners behind my back, trying to sabotage my livelihood, probably thinking I'd crumble, that I'd come crawling back, that I'd say, "Okay, fine, you can stay." Instead, I forwarded the email to my attorney. Yes, I'd hired a lawyer, one who didn't flinch when I said the people I was evicting were my biological family. One who had walked me through everything, down to the state codes for residential eviction in Washington. One who was already assembling documentation for damages in case I needed it. Let them try something. Let them throw tantrums. I had receipts, I had boundaries, I had Luna. On day 17, the emotional warfare got theatrical. My mum took to crying loudly each night. No words, just sobbing, followed by deep, "Why is this happening to me?" sighs. Sometimes she'd play old music I used to listen to as a kid, hoping I'd break, hoping I'd walk in and say, "I didn't mean it," but I didn't. I walked past with my headphones in, updating Luna's baby registry from my laptop. I was done performing for an audience that only clapped for someone else. By day 21, Zoe tried the guilt route. She sat across from me in the kitchen, arms crossed, hood pulled up like she was preparing for an interrogation. "If you make us leave, I might lose my scholarship. I won't have a stable place to study. You really want that on your conscience?" I looked at her for a long moment. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. "You know what, Zoe? I wanted to go to art school once. I had dreams too. You remember what Mum said? Drawing doesn't pay the bills. You know what I did instead? I started a business. I worked. I paid the bills. And I made this home, the one you moved into without asking." She looked away. "I'm not ruining your future. I'm just stepping out of your shadow." Day 24 brought a strange quiet. No more slamming, no more background sobbing, just stillness. Like they had finally understood, the countdown was real. I kept working, kept painting, kept breathing. Luna's nursery was almost done. Soft lilac walls, a handmade mobile of paper stars. A white bookshelf filled with picture books I used to love, waiting for new little hands to explore them. Every nail I hammered, every shelf I built, every sticker I peeled and pressed, it all whispered the same thing to her. "You will never feel invisible. Not under my roof." Day 30 came like a quiet drumbeat. No fireworks, no screaming matches, just boxes. Just silence. I woke up earlier than usual, not from stress but from peace. The kind of peace you don't notice until everything that used to disturb it is finally gone. The sun bled gently through the curtains in Luna's nursery. She kicked once, almost like she was nudging me. It's time. I made coffee in silence, the way I liked it. Not drowned out by Zoe's music or my mother's commentary on how much creamer I used. Down the hall, I could hear the scuff of suitcase wheels, the squeak of my dad's shoes, the zipping of duffel bags, and the occasional clink of kitchenware hurriedly stuffed into plastic bins. No one knocked on my door. No one begged for an extension. Not anymore. My mum emerged first, Sandra, in her stiff floral cardigan, lips pressed into a disapproving line, like the act of carrying her own luggage offended her soul. She didn't speak to me. Daniel followed, dragging a suitcase with one busted wheel and an expression halfway between shame and irritation. He didn't speak either, just glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I stayed in the hallway, arms folded, steady, not triumphant, Not gloating, just free. Zoe was the last to leave. She stood at the front door, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning the room like she was searching for one last thing to hold against me. "You'll regret this," she said. Her voice was dry, not angry, not emotional, just cold. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just said, "I already don't." The door closed behind them with a soft click. And suddenly, the house felt bigger, brighter, quieter, but in the best way. It wasn't just the lack of clutter or noise, it was the absence of tension, of bitterness, of being expected to shrink to make others comfortable. I stood in the centre of my living room and let out a breath I hadn't realised I'd been holding for years. A year has passed since that moment. Luna arrived on a crisp, rainy morning in early summer. She came into the world with a strong cry and steady heartbeat, and those same quiet, watchful eyes that always seemed to ask, "Is this world safe?" And I swore to her then and there, with me it always will be. Our little apartment is still humble, but now it feels like home. No more walking on eggshells, no more whispered insults or helpful suggestions disguised as jabs. Just me, my daughter, and a space that honours both of us. I still run my online shop. After Luna was born, I took a break, not because I was forced to, but because I chose to. My sales didn't plummet, my world didn't fall apart. Instead, I found a rhythm. A few months ago, I hired Leo as a part-time fulfillment manager. He comes by twice a week to help with packing and shipping. He brings coffee and stories, and sometimes fresh bagels. He's family not by blood but by loyalty, and that counts for more. As for them, I don't hear from Sandra, Daniel, or Zoe anymore, not directly. I get the occasional update through distant relatives, people who never really called until they needed something to gossip about. Zoe dropped out of Yale after one semester. Apparently, she wasn't ready for laundry, grocery shopping, or managing a calendar without someone else's reminders. The silence she used to weaponize became her roommate, and she hated it. Sandra and Daniel bounced from couch to motel to cousin's spare bedroom. Eventually, they tried living with Uncle Josh, the same one they'd complained about for being too liberal with his boundaries. That lasted 5 months. He asked them to leave after my dad refused to chip in for utilities, and my mum scolded his wife for not folding towels properly. I wasn't surprised. Some things don't collapse when you leave. They were already cracked. You just finally walked far enough to see it. Sometimes I think about them, not with rage, not even with regret, just as a reminder. A reminder that love is not owed, it's earned. That family without respect is just proximity, and that choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves turned shades of cinnamon and rust, I pushed Luna's stroller through the park near our place. She giggled at the squirrels darting past and tried to mimic the whistle I made at the birds. I watched her, wild and gentle and untamed by the fear of being too much. And I knew, deep in my bones, she will never be raised to shrink. She will know what it means to be seen fully, completely, not as background, but as story. And as I watched the light bounce off her cheeks and caught my own reflection in a park bench window, I smiled, not because it's perfect, but because it's finally mine. Story 2. You know those moments where reality slaps you mid-sip of coffee? Yeah, that was me. I was standing in my kitchen, half-dressed, and halfway through a cup of hazelnut brew, when my mum's voice came through the phone, sharp and concerned. "Mel, have you been ordering a ton of food with your debit card?" My stomach turned. "No, why?" There are 6 charges: burgers, sushi, pizza, all through DoorFast or whatever it's called. Over $300. $300? My heart started doing jumping jacks in my chest. I rarely even used my debit card. My meal plan at school was enough, and if I ever wanted something extra, it was a one-off thing, maybe a latte, not a feast. I told her I'd check, then hung up and opened my banking app. And there it was, 6 charges spaced over 2 weeks. I didn't recognize a single one. At first, I thought maybe my card had been skimmed, but I wasn't careless with it. I rarely carried it around. Only one person had ever had access to it: Ryan. Ryan was my boyfriend. Charming, magnetic, and occasionally intense in the kind of way people politely call passionate. We'd been dating for about a year, and while he had his temperamental moments, I never thought he'd steal from me. Still, the timing and location of the charges made it hard to ignore. Most were placed late at night, delivered to a building 2 blocks from his dorm. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it had to be a coincidence. But the unease in my gut wasn't budging. So I walked the 15 minutes to Ryan's dorm. He opened the door with that usual smirk, wearing sweats and a look that said, "What now? Hey, random question, have you used my debit card?" His face changed instantly. The smirk evaporated. "Are you serious? You think I'd steal from you?" I just saw a bunch of delivery charges. I never ordered any of it. And you're the only one who's had access. Wow, Melanie, that's how little you trust me. Maybe some scammer got your info. You should cancel it before they wipe your account. He was angry, too angry. Defensive in that way people get when they're not just insulted, they're cornered. I played it cool. "Yeah, good idea. I'll call the bank." I left his dorm and cancelled the card that night, but my gut still screamed that something wasn't right. So I contacted the delivery service, told them I had unauthorized charges, asked for receipts. 3 hours later, they emailed me. Every receipt was linked to one name, Ryan C. The attempts to scribble out his name on the receipt scans were laughably bad. It was still fully visible. My stomach twisted again. He had looked me in the eyes, lied, and then ate the damn food I unknowingly paid for, hours before I asked him. I wanted to scream. The next morning, I went straight to his door again. This time I was shaking but not afraid. "I have the receipts," I told him flatly. He blinked. "Receipts for what?" "For the food you ordered. With my card. Your name is on them." He didn't even deny it. His whole demeanour twisted like he dropped the mask completely. "You went snooping? Seriously," he hissed. "You stole from me and then lied." "We're done, Ryan," he laughed. A bitter, joyless sound. "You think you can just walk away from me? You're nothing without me. Watch me." I turned and walked away. I should have felt powerful. Instead, I felt watched, uneasy, like I'd poked a bear that wasn't quite done with me. That night I barely slept. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree around 1 a.m. "Ryan, 1:14 am. You're really making a scene over takeout. Pathetic. 1:37 am. Should have known you'd turn psycho. 2:05 am. You have no proof. 2:30 am. You better not tell anyone. 4:12 am. You're going to regret this." I stared at the screen, numb. This wasn't just some breakup tantrum. This was a threat. By noon the next day, whispers started. Friends gave me side eyes. People the first didn't even know well avoided eye contact. My roommate, Ash, finally came clean. "Mel, look at this." She showed me Ryan's story. It was a fake text thread me, supposedly begging him to take me back. Captioned, "Crazy ex won't leave me alone." I laughed. The kind of laugh that means you're about to punch drywall. "He's telling people I stole from him," Ash added quietly. That stung. I felt like I was losing everything: my money, my relationship, my reputation. And Ryan? He was winning. He controlled the narrative. Until I decided he wouldn't anymore. A friend of his, Jordan, texted me that night. "Jordan," he's saying, "you embarrassed him. That you owe him. He's mad, Mel. Be careful." I locked my door that night. At 3:47 am, I woke up to a sound I'll never forget, my doorknob turning. Soft knock. Mel. Open up. Ryan. I froze. My fingers shook as I texted Ash, who was at her boyfriend's place. Me. Ryan's outside my door. He won't leave. Ash. Call security. Right now. I did. Campus security said officers were on their way. I stayed still, barely breathing. 2 minutes later, I heard them arrive. One of them knocked. "Miss, it's safe now. You can open the door." Ryan was gone. I reported it. Campus security gave him a formal warning and banned him from my building. I thought that was it. But then my bank account pinged. Suspicious login attempt. I opened my app. My savings gone. From over $3,000 to $14.82. He drained my account. It wasn't just a breakup anymore. It was war. One didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at my phone, stunned into silence. My savings were gone. Every cent I had scraped together through part-time tutoring, babysitting over breaks, birthday cash I'd saved instead of spending like everyone else, poof. My balance read $14.82. I thought maybe it was a glitch. Maybe the app was buggy. But no, the transaction history was all there. Neat little transfers to a payment app I didn't use. Each one carefully spaced out so I wouldn't notice until it was too late. I knew exactly who it was. I didn't even need to guess. Ryan. The same guy who looked me in the eye and told me I was crazy for asking about a few food orders. The same guy who'd faked texts, spread rumors, and tried to paint himself as the victim. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was furious. So I made a plan. First, I called the bank. The rep was nice, calm, probably trained for moments just like this. I explained everything: unauthorized transfers, the timeline, the fact that my ex had access to my banking details. She pulled up the account records and confirmed something important. The transfers had been made through a digital payment app, linked directly to my bank, which meant there was a trail. And if there's one thing Ryan wasn't, it was careful. She couldn't give me the recipient name, but she flagged the transactions for fraud investigation. I needed more, so I called his bank. It took some strategic charm, polite concern, a little theatrical anxiety, some exaggerated "I'm so scared he's going to ruin my life" energy, but eventually I got what I needed: confirmation that the money had landed in an account under his full name. That was all I needed. The trap was set. I marched straight to campus security and laid everything out. The messages, the door incident, the fake texts, the bank proof. They took it seriously this time. Like full notepad serious. By the end of that meeting, Ryan wasn't just banned from my dorm, he was banned from all campus housing. They told me if he stepped within 50 feet of me, they'd notify the police. Good, but not enough. Because Ryan wasn't just some petty thief. He had something: he actually cared about his grades. He was in one of the top honours programs on campus, full scholarship, academic probation if you so much as missed a deadline. I filed an official misconduct report. I attached the bank documentation, the fraud alert notice, screenshots of every message and fake text thread. I made sure to include the time he tried to break into my room. Everything. I didn't just want Ryan out of my life. I wanted consequences. 2 days later, it happened. I was walking to class, headphones in, trying to stay under the radar, when I heard yelling. Not like casual yelling. This was meltdown yelling. What do you mean I am on probation? I turned the corner and there he was, Ryan, standing outside the academic affairs office, hands flying everywhere, face turning redder by the second. She's lying. She's obsessed with me. This is all fake. A staff member stood calmly in the doorway, not even blinking. Mr. Collins, we have evidence. Your case is being reviewed by the university's ethics committee. I kept walking. Quietly, calmly. Inside, though, I was practically doing cartwheels, but I wasn't done. Ryan's parents were the ones funding his education. Daddy's money, Mummy's pride and joy, so I wrote them an email. Not dramatic, not mean, just professional. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I'm writing to inform you that your son has been involved in fraudulent activity involving my bank account. I have filed an official report with both our campus and local law enforcement. I wanted you to be aware as this could impact his academic and financial standing. Attached are the relevant documents. Then I hit send. No emojis, no hope you're well, just facts. 2 days later, my roommate Ash ran into the room like she'd just won the lottery. Mel, check this out. She flipped her laptop around. Ryan's student profile? Suspended. Apparently, his parents pulled his tuition the moment they found out. Not out of guilt, out of shame. The university froze his scholarship while the investigation ran, and just like that, the golden boy's future went up in smoke. Word got around fast. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need to, people whispered in the dining hall. Someone posted an anonymous thread on the campus forum. Honours student suspended over fraud case. And for once, it wasn't me getting side eyes. People started reaching out. Emily, hey, I'm sorry I didn't believe you earlier. I didn't know. Jordan, so, yeah, his parents are pissed. He's losing his apartment, blaming you for everything. Be careful. That one stuck with me. Because I knew Ryan, I knew how he thought. And if there was one thing he couldn't handle, it was losing control. The threats started again. Blocked number. Late night calls. Unknown. You ruined my life. Unknown. You'll pay for this. Unknown. I know where you live. That last one chilled me. I went straight to the police this time. Campus security had already flagged his name. So when I showed them the screenshots, they took it seriously. Miss Rivera, we can help you file a restraining order. Done, signed, filed. Now, if Ryan even looked in my direction, he wasn't just breaking school rules, he'd be breaking the law. For 2 days, nothing. Silence. Then one night, I got a call from Jordan again. Mel, you need to check the campus forum. I opened it, and there it was, a full-blown rant from Ryan, like essay length, paragraphs of accusations, blaming me for everything. He called me a liar, a manipulator, a psycho who couldn't handle rejection. And then the line that sealed it, I know where she lives. I screenshotted it, sent it to the police. By morning, the post was gone. So was his student email. Expelled. He was officially done. That should have been the end. But Ryan had one last call in him. Blocked number again. Against my better judgment, I picked up. You think you won, he said. His voice was low, shaky. You took everything from me. I took a breath. Steady. No, Ryan, you did that to yourself. Then I hung up. And I never heard from him again. For the first time in weeks, I didn't wake up to check my phone in fear. No calls, no drama. Campus got quiet. People stopped whispering. Ryan's fake stories faded. It was like he never existed. Ash and I sat in our usual cafe spot the next weekend. She looked up from her phone. He deleted all his socials, Instagram, Snap, everything. I sighed. Finally. So, what now? She asked. And for the first time, I had an answer. Now, I move on. Because this whole thing, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about getting my life back. Life after Ryan felt. Still. Not peaceful exactly, but still. Like the air after a storm, you're not sure if it's over, but you're too tired to care. No texts, no fake stories. No one watching me from the end of the hallway pretending not to. I got up every morning, grabbed coffee, walked to class, and let myself exhale. One day at a time. That's how I rebuilt things. The whispers stopped. The stares faded. Even the ones who believed his lies were slowly figuring out the truth on their own. I didn't need to explain. I just needed to exist and let the dust settle. I didn't expect to hear his name again, but of course, Ryan didn't know how to disappear. It was a Friday afternoon when Jordan, the same friend of Ryan's who had low-key warned me before, sent me a text. "Jordan, you're not going to believe this." I was halfway through cleaning my apartment, earbuds in, music blasting. I paused and texted back. "Me, what now?" Jordan, he tried enrolling at another university. "Me, okay." Jordan, they rejected him. Found out about his expulsion. I stared at the screen. Wait, seriously? Turns out getting kicked out for financial fraud isn't something universities ignore, especially when it's linked to an active police report and a restraining order. Ryan had burned his bridges, lit a match, dropped it, and kept walking like the flames couldn't touch him. But they did, hard. I didn't feel sorry for him, not even a little. He made every choice along the way, lied, stole, threatened, harassed, and he thought there'd be no consequences. But karma doesn't forget. And she's got a long memory. A year passed. I finished my semester, landed an internship at a non-profit I loved, and started making actual plans, my own place, my own money, my own damn life. Ash and I grabbed lunch one day at this tiny cafe off campus. Same place we used to hang when everything with Ryan was falling apart. It felt different now, lighter. She looked up from her phone. "You ever wonder what happened to him?" I shrugged. "Not really, and I meant it. He wasn't a part of my world anymore. He was a lesson, not a presence. A reminder of what happens when you let someone make withdrawals from your life without permission. But I will say this, the scars don't vanish. Even now, sometimes I double-check my bank accounts before I go to bed. I still lock my door twice. There are nights when I hear footsteps in the hall and my breath catches without me thinking. Healing isn't linear, but it's happening. I've started saving again, slowly, smartly. I took a crash course in personal finance, opened a high-yield savings account, and got a second job for a while, not because I had to, but because I needed to prove to myself I could stand on my own again. And I could. A few months after graduation, I got one last text from a number I didn't recognize. "Unknown, you still think you won?" I stared at it. Didn't reply, didn't flinch. I just blocked the number. Again, because that wasn't my problem anymore. That was his. The truth is, I didn't win by ruining Ryan's life. I won because I didn't let him ruin mine. I didn't let fear stop me. I didn't let the lies become reality. I didn't let him take more than he already had. I rebuilt what he broke without shortcuts. without revenge fantasies, without becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. I didn't need to destroy him. He did that all by himself. 1 year later, I stood in my new apartment, keys in hand, furniture still arriving piece by piece. Sunlight poured in through the windows. There was music playing in the background, laundry going in the corner. Nothing dramatic, just peace. It was quiet, and this time I liked it. Ash stopped by with coffee and flopped onto my couch, looking around. "Damn, you really made it," I smiled. "Told you I would." We clinked paper cups like champagne. I don't think about Ryan much anymore. But sometimes, late at night, when I close my banking app and see a balance that's mine, fully, completely mine, I remember that girl who stood outside his dorm shaking, terrified of a boy who thought he owned her. I remember her, and I'm proud of her, because she didn't break. She got smart, she got loud when she had to, she got justice. And then she got free. Story 3, I don't even know where to begin, but I'll try. 3 years ago, my sister accused me of stealing her engagement ring, and my family didn't just believe her, they threw me out of the house. Turns out, the ring had been in the garbage disposal the entire time. But by the time anyone realized the truth, the damage had already been done. My name's Caleb, I'm 25 now, and I live in a small town in northern Indiana. I grew up in a modest, 2-story house with my parents, David and Maureen, and my older sister, Avery. She's 28 now, was 25 when everything went down. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed. Dad taught science at the high school, and Mum worked at the hospital as an ER nurse. They were the kind of people who packed lunch every day and reused wrapping paper to save a few bucks. Avery and I were close when we were little. Backyard adventures, made-up games, climbing the old pine tree behind our house, we were inseparable. She was always the bossy one, but I didn't mind. That was just Avery. Things changed in high school. She was the golden child, valedictorian, debate champ, internship with the mayor's office. Meanwhile, I was the average kid, just trying to make it through chemistry without failing. She went off to some big university out east while I stuck around, enrolled at the community college, took odd jobs to figure out what I wanted to do. We drifted, like siblings do sometimes. But I never thought we hated each other. Then came the engagement. Avery got engaged to her boyfriend, Nathan. Corporate law guy, came from a family that probably drinks wine with lunch. The ring was some generational family heirloom, massive, sparkly and flaunted in every direction. Avery acted like she'd won the lottery. And to be fair, my parents treated her like she had. They threw a massive engagement party, basically turned our house into a Pinterest board. Fancy people from the city showed up, talking about art and finance while I stood by the cooler with my old high school buddies, nursing a warm beer and wondering how we'd all grown so far apart. And then everything imploded. It was maybe a month after that party. I had a day off work and was chilling in my room playing games when Avery and Mum got back from wedding shopping. I heard them laughing in the kitchen, didn't think anything of it. About an hour later, I heard Avery scream. I ran downstairs, expecting a bug or a broken dish. Instead, she was standing by the sink, red-faced, yelling that her engagement ring was gone. She'd taken it off while doing dishes, left it on the counter, and now it was nowhere to be found. And guess who was the only other person home? She pointed right at me, claimed I must have taken it, said I was jealous, bitter, that maybe I wanted to pawn it for some cash to finally do something with my life. I laughed at first. I thought it was a joke. But Avery wasn't laughing. And when Mom and Dad got home and she laid out her dramatic version of events, something in their eyes shifted. They searched my room, tore through every drawer, upended every box. Of course, they didn't find the ring. But they did find a few $100 I'd stashed away from my job at the hardware store. That's it, Avery said, practically triumphant. He sold it. I tried to explain I was saving for a class at the community college, maybe a laptop if I could stretch it, but nobody listened. The next few days were a blur of accusations and guilt-tripping. Mum crying, Dad not even looking at me, Avery pressing me to confess, saying she wouldn't press charges if I just came clean. After a week of this circus, my parents gave me 2 days to pack and leave. Just like that. 22 years old, broke, blindsided and homeless over something I didn't do. I moved in with my buddy Marcus for a while. He'd just gotten back from the Navy and had a tiny place across town. His couch became my bed. I took random gigs, dog walking, stocking shelves, helping a buddy demo an old shed. Anything to make a few bucks and not feel like a burden. Eventually, I landed a job at a warehouse. Grueling hours, freezing in the winter, but it paid the bills. I moved into a shared house with 3 other guys from work. Not glamorous, but it was mine. That first year, it was rough. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, replaying the whole thing, wondering how my sister, who used to share her Halloween candy with me, could think I'd actually steal from her. Wondering how my parents could just kick me out without even trying to hear me out. I stopped taking their calls. They left voicemails, especially Mum, begging me to talk, saying things could be fixed. Dad would send cold, matter-of-fact texts like, "Let's talk about what happened," as if it was a misunderstanding, not a character assassination. Avery showed up once at my job. I ducked out before she saw me. Couldn't deal with it. I built a new life, made friends at work, took online business classes, even got promoted to shift supervisor. It wasn't the life I expected, but it was finally mine. I started taking pride in things again, bought my own bed, paid my bills on time, started planning for the future. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about them, especially around the holidays. Watching people post about family dinners, seeing parents with their kids at the grocery store, it hit hard. I missed what we used to be, but I didn't miss the people they became. Then, out of nowhere, an email from Dad. "We need to talk." At first, I deleted it. But curiosity got the better of me. I called him. And what he told me, the ring, they found it. Apparently, Avery knocked it into the garbage disposal while doing dishes. It had been sitting there the whole time. She only found it when the disposal jammed and a plumber fished it out. 3 years later, 3 years, they apologized, said they felt awful, that they wanted to make things right. And I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt like screaming. Because while they were playing happy family with Avery's new husband and planning brunches, I was crashing on couches and praying I wouldn't be fired for dozing off at work. They want me to come back, to visit, to forgive. But how do you forgive people who didn't even ask for your side of the story? That's the question I'm still trying to answer. I didn't say yes right away. After that call with my dad, I just sat there, staring at my cracked phone screen. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel rage. I just felt hollow, like someone had told me a storm was over, but forgot to mention they'd already bulldozed the whole town. They wanted to meet up to talk face to face. Not at the house, thank God. I told them if we were doing this, it'd be in public, neutral ground. So we picked a quiet coffee shop 2 towns over. No chance of running into anyone we knew. That was important to me. I showed up early. Old habit. Picked a booth in the back. I needed to sit with my back to the wall. Just something about being able to see the exits made me feel better. I hadn't seen my parents or Avery in over 3 years. I didn't know what would happen, what they'd say. If they'd pretend it was no big deal, or worse, try to rewrite history. They walked in 10 minutes late. My mum looked like she'd aged 20 years, not 3. She used to have this put together, nurse-on-the-go energy. That day, she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. My dad still stiff, still serious but quieter. Not the same man who told me I was tearing this family apart while standing in my bedroom like a cop on a raid. And Avery, she couldn't even look at me. That hit harder than I expected. We sat, awkward silence for a full minute. Then they all started talking at once, apologies, explanations, regrets. I just sat there, watching their mouths move. Eventually, I held up a hand, one at a time. My mum went first. Through tears, she said she'd failed me, that she'd let fear and pride take the wheel, that the day they kicked me out, she cried herself to sleep but didn't have the guts to stop it. My dad followed, said he'd run through that week in his head 100 times. How he should have asked more questions, trusted me, believed me. He said what hurt most was realizing that for all his talk about fairness and logic, he'd chosen blind loyalty to the child who made him proud, not the one who needed him most. And Avery, God. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just whispered, "I was wrong," like the words tasted like ash. Said she'd been so caught up in her own world that she couldn't imagine being wrong about something. That when the ring went missing, blaming me was the simplest explanation, and once our parents backed her up, she didn't have the courage to backtrack. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was still that cold knot in my gut. That part of me that remembered the look on her face when I was packing my bag. The part that had lived off gas station sandwiches while she honeymooned in Italy. I didn't forgive them. Not that day. I told them I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't ready to go back. I wasn't ready for Sunday dinners or family group chats or birthday cards signed "Love you always." Because for 3 years, they hadn't loved me. Not when it counted, not when it mattered. My mum reached for my hand. I flinched. She pulled back like she'd touched a stove. "I get it," she said quietly. "I just hope someday you won't flinch anymore." We said our goodbyes in the parking lot. No hugs, just distance and cold wind and the sound of cars going by. I got into my old beater car and drove back to my apartment, my life, the one I'd built when they left me behind. And that night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a therapist. First session was rough. I barely spoke. Just sat there, letting the silence speak for me. But by the 3rd week, I started opening up. About the betrayal, about feeling like the family dog everyone loved until it bit someone, and then suddenly just a liability. Something to be gotten rid of. Therapy helped. Not in some overnight magical way, but in small human ways. I learned to name what I was feeling instead of just burying it. I learned that grief isn't just for death. It's for the people who are still alive, but don't show up for you when you need them the most. Meanwhile, life kept going. I kept working. Got another raise at the warehouse. My manager offered me a shot at handling team scheduling, and I took it. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt good to be trusted. I started saving again. Only this time, not for classes I'd never take, for a place of my own. No roommates, just mine. The calls started coming in again after a few weeks. First my mum, once a week. Then my dad, checking in every other Sunday. Nothing deep weather. How work was going. What show they were binge watching. I kept it light. No talk of the incident. No talk of Avery. Avery texted a few times. I didn't respond at first. Just stared at her messages like they were museum exhibits. "I am so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. I miss you." Eventually I texted back, "I need time." That was it. She said she understood. She didn't push. I kept doing the work, therapy, journaling, hanging out with the guys from the warehouse. Marcus became my rock again. We'd grab beers after work and talk about dumb stuff. Fantasy football, broken forklifts, dreams of starting a small business one day. I started seeing the world differently. I stopped romanticizing the past. The childhood memories, the laughter, the treehouse games, they were real. But so were the cracks. The way Avery's accomplishments got praised like Olympic gold, while my wins were treated like participation trophies. The way my parents pushed her toward the stars, while quietly preparing me to stay grounded, forever. 3 years gave me clarity I never would have had otherwise. So when I got a call one day from Avery saying she wanted to meet just the two of us, I didn't say no. I said, not yet. And I meant it. Because this time I wasn't the boy begging to be believed. I was the man deciding who got to stay in my life and who had to earn their way back. It's been nearly a year since that first meeting in the coffee shop. Feels like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. I've kept my distance, but not in anger, just in quiet clarity. There's a difference. The calls from my parents kept coming, but they stayed respectful. No pressure, no guilt trips. Just small check-ins, like they were relearning how to be in my life without controlling it. Sometimes Mum would tell me about her garden like we hadn't missed 3 years of birthdays and holidays. Sometimes Dad would send me articles about warehouse tech or leadership tips, like we were trying to build something on top of the wreckage. I didn't open all of them, but I opened some. Avery. She waited. For months, she didn't call, didn't text. Then one day, she sent me a picture. It was us, barefoot, dirt-streaked kids, standing under that old pine tree in the backyard. She didn't say anything with it, just sent the photo. I stared at it for a long time. We looked so sure of each other back then. I didn't reply right away. When I finally did, I said, I remember that day. We thought the tree was magic. She wrote back, I think we were right. And maybe we were. We finally met, just the two of us, on a Sunday afternoon in early spring. Neutral ground again this time, a park we used to walk through as kids. She looked smaller. Not physically, just emotionally. Like the weight of the last few years had worn her down. But she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just said, I don't expect anything from you. I just want to be honest. So she was. She talked about how she'd spent those 3 years convincing herself I must have done it. Not because the evidence was strong, but because the alternative being that wrong, that cruel, was too much to admit. She told me about the guilt. About the nights she'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if I was safe, if I was even still in town. Then she asked a question that caught me off guard. Did you ever hate me? I didn't lie. I told her there were nights I did. Not in the way you hate a villain in a movie, but in the way you hate the silence after betrayal. The way you hate the version of yourself that begged to be heard. But I also told her something else. Something I hadn't realized until the words came out. I don't hate you now. She looked away when I said it, wiped her eyes without making a sound. We didn't hug. We didn't suddenly become siblings again, but we talked about what happened, about what it meant, about what came next. That conversation didn't fix everything, but it gave us a beginning. A true one, not based on pretending nothing happened, but on facing exactly what did. Back home, I kept working. Saved enough to get my own apartment. A real one. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, but mine. No roommates, no shared fridge drama, no whispered phone calls in the hallway. For the first time in my life, I felt steady. I also got promoted again, shift lead, turned into warehouse ops coordinator. Bigger title, more stress. But I welcomed it. I liked knowing where things were going. I liked being part of the plan. And therapy? I stuck with it. My therapist told me healing wasn't linear. That some weeks I'd feel free and other weeks I'd find myself back in the memory loop. She was right. But the loops started getting weaker, the nights shorter, the flashbacks quieter. Sometimes people ask if I ever forgave my family. Here's what I say. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a long road, and you walk it alone at first. Then maybe if the people who hurt you are willing to walk too, you meet somewhere in the middle, but you don't wait for them. You walk anyway. I forgave my parents in pieces. Not because they earned it, but because I didn't want to carry the weight anymore. I forgave Avery when I saw her show up without needing anything in return. But full trust? That takes longer. And maybe that's okay. I visit sometimes now. Not often, not for holidays, but enough. Dad doesn't call me son like he used to, but his eyes soften when I walk through the door. Mum bakes too much and cries too easily. Avery makes space instead of noise. We're not what we were, but we're not strangers either. Last month, I got an offer for a new job in another state. Bigger company, bigger pay, a fresh start with my name on the lease and my own desk. It felt right. I told my family during one of those slow Sunday dinners. They nodded, supported me, didn't beg me to stay, didn't guilt me, just asked if they could visit sometime. I said, maybe, and meant it. As I packed up my apartment, I found that old photo Avery sent the one of us as kids under the tree. I took it out of the drawer, stuck it on the fridge, not because I wanted to go back, but because I wanted to remember where I came from. Because even though they broke me once, I built myself back, and no one can take that from me. I don't know what the future looks like. Maybe we'll grow closer. Maybe we'll drift again. But either way, I'm at peace. I didn't get justice in a courtroom. I didn't get a dramatic apology on a stage. What I got was better. I got my life back, and that's enough.